What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Chris, and welcome to my new series, Virtually News. In this series, I'm hoping to be able to go over some of the news topics that come up, whether it be in the mainstream media or in the video game media, and hopefully take a closer look at exactly how they're going to affect the industry and our societies as a whole. The biggest thing driving behind this is the fact that now with about the average person in America at least experiencing video games, the older generation set apart, of course, but the average American being able to enjoy video games on at least weekly basis, I feel it's kind of odd that we're still treated as kind of a subsection of society, not fully accepted in our place and in our role and our way of affecting other lives. And that's sad, that's disgusting, and I want to try to answer these old tropes, these old ideas that keep being trotted out to us every time some kind of mass murder comes out and we're blamed for being murder simulators. I'm really tired of having to deal with that, and the next time it comes up, I'm really hoping to be able to make a very succinct argument against it, hopefully to be able to kind of just put people right back in their place when it comes to that, and stop trying to do that because they don't do it with movies, they don't do it with pictures hanging on the wall, and they certainly don't do it with books. So I want to try to answer those kind of questions. I also want to try to take a deeper look at the industry and how we have some of these internal questions, and I want to give a deeper insight to them. So things like how women are still treated mostly as sex objects rather than tangible characters in video games. I want to give a deeper understanding of that than just, well, the men making it are going to be men, and that it's a boys' club. There's much, much more to that. There's plenty of philosophy, there's plenty of genetics behind it, and while I don't want to say one way or the other in a lot of these subjects, I do want to give more context. I feel like that's something that is missing a lot. That's kind of why we have problems with the mainstream media, right? Lack of context. So that's what I'm hoping to do here, is give context, because this is what we need to do to truly understand the medium and to be able to break into the larger society and get that true sense of acceptance, even from those older generations, which granted necessarily isn't that important, but it's still worthwhile to try to make sure that they understand why it is that we love this form of media. And of course, the last thing I really want to do is, again, try to make people understand why this should be accepted on the same plane as, people writing novels or reading novels, people watching movies and documentaries, and being able to, at the same time, look at a piece of artwork hanging on the wall and try to, at the same time, make people realize that that's what video games are. They're another form of art and entertainment. So, yes, there are going to be movies that are much more artistic, and there are going to be games that are much more artistic. There's going to be games that are much more entertainment-wise and not as deep. And there's also going to be movies that are just entertainment-wise and aren't going to be as deep. And so I want to try to expand on that and give people a wider understanding, and hopefully be able to get into some of these core concepts like player agency, depth versus complexity, and all these other kind of concepts that really build up video games. So that's what I'm hoping to do with the series. I hope you guys are interested in that kind of idea. If you have any things that you want discussed, go ahead and put them in the comment section down below. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and cover the topic of what makes video games so different than any other piece of art or entertainment out there. So what exactly makes video games different than any other form of media? Well, ironically, I'm going to go ahead and use a quote from George R.R. Martin's A Dance of Dragons. Now, it's when the character Jojen says, "A man who reads lives 1,000 lives before he dies, and a man who never reads leads only one." One. And how much more true is that of video games? Now, when you read a book, you are plain and simple an observer, and this is how it is for all other forms of media. You are an observer for when you just look at still images, say like artwork or a picture that somebody has drawn. You are an observer when you read a book. You are the observer when you watch a movie, and you are the observer when you listen to music. You are not in any way a part of it. You might feel a part of it, and sometimes they might direct some context at you, especially when you look at video or when you look at that. They might recognize the fact that you're observing. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a part of what's going on. Video games are completely different than that. And so when we talk about living thousands of lives, how much more true is that of video games? How much more true is that when I get to inhabit the world, and not only that, they get to express different things to me. I get to feel a different range of emotions than I would if I was just an observer, or to experience different things that aren't possible in real life, to take me into a different place. And again, as the player, I get to do these things. There are games out there that can make you understand truly through your own interactions what it means to not have control. To not have control and at the same time to actually kind of enjoy not having control, because no matter how much you fight it, you know that you're going to lose. The only way that you can actually gain control is to give up control. Now, how many books have explained that to you? Now, how many books or movies have shown you what it's like to love and to grow an attachment to somebody and to fight for them and to fight with them and have them help you and struggle, and at the very end for them to grab you and betray you and to kill you, and at the same time with that ending when you stand back and say, whoa, what just happened? The game makes you reflect on what happened throughout it, and you go, I get it now. And it almost seems justified for what happened. It seems like that makes total sense for why that happened. Now, what about other games? What about other games where you can do things that you literally could never do in real life? Like you can jump into a game and become a dragon slayer. You can become the hero of a universe that is inhabited by tons of different races, big and small, inhabiting hundreds of planets around universe. And at the same time, get a girl. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily something that people should evolve their lives around of, but that is a sense of epicness that is only written in books and in movies that we never actually get a chance to do. We always feel that sense of jealousy, especially I feel like with men, we're taught that we need to be heroic, we're taught that we need to be soldiers, to be saviors. And so we watch these movies and we watch these men that have these sculpted bodies, and they go and they do great things and they get the girl at the end of it. And yet at the same time, just because we don't necessarily look that way or we're not interacting with real people, when that is presented to us in a video game, that is mocked. No, this is a form of entertainment to where we now feel like we are the heroes. We feel like we are getting the girl. And it is a small happenstance, but how often can you feel that way, the exact same way, when you watch a movie, when you read a book? You don't feel that way. You feel completely different because it's happening to you. Or how about when you're not a hero? How about when you only are just a lonely soldier on the battlefield that is being shot at, explosions everywhere, where there is just chaos and carnage, and you are just another number. You are just another soldier on the field trying to achieve an objective, and an objective that essentially disappears the second the game is over and is repeated over and over and over again, basically nullifying any of the points and why you do it, but at the same time you still sense the meaning, the purpose, and the awesomeness that is being able to feel that sense of grandeur, just to be a part of that. Because these are things you're never going to take part in the world. What do you do in the real world? In the real world, you drive your car. In the real world, you go to work and you fill out some paperwork, you sit in a cubicle. For me personally, I serve coffee, and every now and again I get to make a video. That's what I do in the real world. Right? That's what we do. We inhabit these simple lives, and when we can go and visit these virtual worlds and we can play out a way that we've always wanted to live our lives, but at the same time might even be afraid to because of the danger and the risks that happen, we can do that without that sense of risk. It truly opens up the imagination more than any of these other pieces of media could. But the second big thing, in my opinion, that really makes video games different is the fact that it connects people. Now, we're not talking about single-player games necessarily here, but the fact that unlike any other form of media, video games connect people together. Now, of course, you can always have book clubs, but what happens in a book club? You take the book home and you read it on your own. And then you go, and then you come to the club, and then you talk about what you thought about it. Okay? Now, we can do it with movies, but, you go to a movie theater with friends, you go to see that midnight showing of The Hobbit, and you have a great old time, but what ends up happening during these movies? You sit quietly, and whenever somebody talks, you tend to get pissed off, and you don't want them around you anymore. You just kind of want to sit there and watch the movie. It's not inclusive. Okay, I mean, video games, unlike any other art form, sometimes to truly enjoy them, the best way to enjoy them is to enjoy them together. Now, my life when it comes to video games would be a complete lie if I didn't tell you that I am a multiplayer player to the T. I have the hardest time playing single player games together because I like to interact with my friends. I like to interact with my family. And quite honestly, this game right here, Dark Age of Camelot, changed my life. One of my best friends that I have in the entire world, I met through Dark Age of Camelot, and he doesn't live near me. I live in Southern California, and he lives in Colorado. Think of that. We talk to each other on an almost daily basis, play games together constantly, buy each other things, and if he goes through a rough patch, I listen to it, and if I go through a rough patch, he listens to me. I have one of my best friends in the world because of a video game. Now, how many times can somebody say, I went to a movie and I made a great friend, somebody I've known for almost a decade? I don't think I know anybody who's like that. I don't know a single person who's read a book and said, you know what, I joined this fantastic book club and I met them. I mean, granted, that could personally, that could always exist, but I mean, how many times people pick up a book off the bookshelf and happen to run into somebody, become best friends over that book? That's how they met. They sat down in the cafe and they talked about how much they loved this book together. That doesn't happen, to my knowledge. I mean, it could happen, but to the extent that it happens with video games, I highly doubt it. I mean, and then think about your close friends. You're done, you're hanging out all day, and you have nothing else to do, but you still really enjoy their company. I know what me and my friends do a lot of the time. Well, I'll see you guys in a couple minutes. I go home, they go home, we end up turning on, boom, now we have something to talk about. We have something to do because we're going to go play Battlefield. We're going to go ahead and play PlanetSide. We're going to go ahead and play, Dragon Commander. We're going to play all these other games that I'm currently playing. And why is that frowned upon in video games? The idea that, he's sitting at home only socializing with other people, but he's not really socializing with them. No, I have found a way that I can interact with some of my closest friends constantly because we now have something new and fresh to talk about, to do, and at the same time help each other and help achieve things. And why is that frowned upon? And of course, then we have the fact that we can meet complete strangers. And for 1 hour, 2 hours, couple minutes, whatever it is, we can work together. Somebody who has a different culture than me, lives in a different country than me, maybe even speaks a different language than me. We can look at each other's avatars, and for whatever amount of time that it takes, we are friends or we are foes. And not because of those things, but because of a separate world. And at the same time, we might exert more sportsmanship in a virtual reality world than we ever would if we were in real life, right? What happens with anonymity in video games when a white supremacist goes up against somebody in the Black Panthers, right? They can either they can both assume that they are of the other race, or maybe, just maybe, that white supremacist could say sorry to a black person for, friendly fire, and they would never know. That's the beauty of anonymity. You take away all the prejudice, and all that's left is your habits. All that's left is your behavior. And that's something that is exclusive to video games. You cannot get that in any other form of media. Because as a player, you have that anonymity and that interaction with other people. That is something that's completely exclusive to video games. So the last thing that I feel like needs to be said about video games and what makes them different is the fact that video games are a completely self-contained form of media. Now, I know I need to explain it, so let me break that down for you. What I mean by that is the fact that when it comes to written word, when it comes to audio, when it comes to video, and when it comes to still images, they are all used to help advertise one another. All right, so somebody might make a video talking about a movie. Somebody might make an article talking about a photographer and their images. Somebody might take all these, these forms of media and use them to advertise other forms of media. And of course, they're used to advertise video games as well. But when have video games ever been used on a wide scale to advertise other forms of media and not been seen as their own product in and of themselves? Because even though we have the notoriously bad video games that are from movies, which there are a couple of exceptions, of course, just because we have those, even then we don't judge necessarily the movie or the show based on how good the game is, because there are plenty of times that crappy movies have come out and we've had fantastic games, and there have been plenty of times that we've had crappy games come out and fantastic movies come out, right? I mean, so we understand that they are completely separate and self-contained pieces of media, and that's not something that you can necessarily judge. Now, it might give you an idea about how much money they put behind it. It might give you an idea of what company they chose to go for the video game, but nonetheless, you don't really compare the two because they are two separate things. Video games are always considered separate products. So that's one of the things that makes video games completely different. We don't treat video games the same way because they're too complex, they're too interactive, and they demand too much personal investment and emotion to be able to just say, oh, well then that must suck, this must suck, yada, yada, yada. Right, I'm not making a video game here to explain to you how video games act differently. This is a completely different form of media because of that. So that's what I think really makes video games different than any other form of media, but makes them at the same time something that should be integrated into the social understanding about what art and entertainment truly are and can be. Video games finally need to have that sense of recognition. But those are my thoughts on the topic. Go ahead and comment down below on what you guys think as well, whether you agree or disagree. If you have any ideas of things that you'd like discussed, any news topics, some news articles you want to share with me, go ahead and throw those down in the description or go ahead and personal message me. You can find that in my About section on my actual channel. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe. My name is Chris, and I'll see you guys next time. Ooh, and my tiny little nipples went to France. Can't believe I just used that for an audio test. All right, well, let's see how that goes.